Yeah, Walter Kristof was born in 1931 in Crosstown. It's in the Czech Republic, now it calls a little bit different. Then his first big station was the ETS in Princeton, where he served in the 60s, where he wrote many papers on sampling and other stuff, statistical stuff, psychometric stuff, and he was mainly involved in mathematical psychology. It was his area, studying psychology, mathematics, being involved in mathematics. From 1973 till 1997, he was a professor in Hamburg. At first, he was professor at the Institute of Social Sciences, which was an institute from sociology, other stuff, and psychology. And they subdivided the institute into different institutes, and he ended up in the Institute of Sociology in 78, and there I met him in 79, or from 79 till 86, because he served as a statistician, not as a sociologist. He never studied sociology. I even know if he was aware of Max Weber, our famous sociologist. He never talked about this, but he was a very, very great statistician, and I liked him a lot. Hamburg was at this time, the seminars were overcrowded, having 50, 100 and more students in the classes. Walter had 6, 7, 5 students, and when Walter was often in South Africa, or was in South Africa visiting Michael Brown, and he might find Michael Greenacre in South Africa, and invited Michael Greenacre to come to Hamburg. This time I was a student. Michael was giving presentations, a series of presentations, sure, and correspondence analysis, and there were 6, 7 other students attending it. Walter's students, sure, and they came and attended. And sure, Michael Greenacre at this time came from South Africa, and it was apartheid, and there was a protest against him, and students were not liking to have somebody in South Africa to talk about something political stuff. So they also attended the conference. There were keen, there were many people. It was almost impossible to run it. The class, so Walter said, okay, let's go in my office. So we went into his office, and there was Michael's presentation. There was also one of the people from the protesting group. After half an hour, he ran away because there were too many formulas and nothing political stuff. So everything was fine. And yeah, then I made also one of my examinations, and statistics was a special kind of sociology I made with Walter. There are yet not many students for doing that, maybe 2, 3 in a year, but from the last 6 in the examination I was in this group, I was aware of 5 got a professorship later. 5 out of 6. This is a great wow, no? 5 out of 6. 4 of us had been worked as assistant in Cologne at the same time for different professors. We were assistants. Maybe you heard their names. It's Stefan Kühne. He was not working in correspondence, he was working in structural equation modeling. Christoph Wolf, the director of GESIS now, working in different fields. And Peter Hartmann, he was more in applied stuff and other things at the University of Düsseldorf, just retired, and as me, and also just retired. I was the only working in correspondence analysis of this small group. There were all of us also in statistics, all of us shares in methodology and statistics, in sociology, or had because they are retired. Yeah, it happens that I was in Cologne, and there we had the famous spring seminar. Every year we had 3 weeks courses, and I was one of the course leader from the Central Archive. I was a young research assistant at this time, and we invited Walter Kristof. So giving a class, a big course on correspondence analysis, sure he did. He came, and afterwards he told me, or he asked me if I like to work with him. My famous statistics professor liked to work with me. Sitting there, sure, yes. And a short time later he sent me a card or a letter and telling me that Michael is in South Africa now, and if we can do something together. okay, it was a good idea. I went to the executive director, Eckhard Lochmann, and told him and asked him, and showed him Michael, and showed him his book. He understood nothing, but nevertheless, he found it interesting to invite him. And then he asked the director of the institute, this was also my supervisor, my first boss at this time. He also was very happy. So we invited Michael to come to Cologne to have a conference. In the first conference, in the first conference, CARME in '91. So it was on the initiative of Walter Kristof. And so we had the first conference organized by Walter, Michael, and myself in Bonn. Some of you who were there, haven't seen them, for example, Peter van der Heyden and others of you can, I can't remember everybody anymore, and it's folded up. So giving papers there, and it was a nice day. And after the conference, we decided to have a book. Michael and I were more keen to have an applied book on statistics and correspondence analysis and applications in the social sciences. Walter had of the statistics, which is complicated, I'm not so much interested in, but we should do it. And so we have our first book. You can see all the books I made with Michael, and we have on a display at the registration room. Yeah, and so Walter came, and he came also later to other conferences, but I think he never presented something, and then he disappeared. He was retired, and Michael and I visited him privately at, I don't know, 2005, 2008, and then he was out, and we couldn't find him in the internet, and so we were searching for him in the internet and found a doctor of him, and we found his former wife, and she said, okay, Walter has died 3 years ago, so this is a memory of him. My old statistic teacher, I learned a huge amount of statistics from him. Without him, I wouldn't be here. Without him, Michael wouldn't be here, and without him, we wouldn't have CARME. So thanks to Walter Kristof.
John was one of the great advocates of the type of methodologies that we will be talking about here at this conference. I know he has attended many editions, but I don't think all of them. And what I want to do is show you several slides that describe parts of his life and also share a few personal memories. John was born on March 13, 1930 in London. And that's a curious thing actually, because John told me that this was the town that he liked to avoid as much as possible. I think he thought it was way too busy. Then he graduated in mathematics from Cambridge in 1953, and after that completed the diploma in mathematical statistics at the University of Manchester. And what you see over here is a part of the picture that is taken at his college in Cambridge, the Downing College, in 1950. And have you recognized John at this stage? Hopefully, if I click, it should come up. Yeah, that's John. The years after, forget about the left-hand, the left-hand picture is a picture at Rothamsted, the Rothamsted Statistics Group. And there you can see John to the right, which is a zoomed-in version of that. So in 1955 he joined Rothamsted Experimental Station, where there was a large statistics group, and his task was to develop computer programs on their very first computers. But from 1966 onwards, he distanced himself from the hands-on computing and got more interested in applied multivariate analysis and the associated graphical display methods. In 1970, he was awarded a special merit position at Rothamsted, which is the equivalent of a personal chair at a university, and that gave him more freedom to do the research as he wished. And from 1985 to 1990, he became head of the Biomathematics Division after the retirement of John Nelber. I know that he didn't like the management part so much and was glad to get retired in 1990. And that brings me to the next slide, also the next period. And I call that his second university career. Actually starting from 1990 until he passed away. And that is also when I met John for the first time. And that was at my first international conference. And actually I just realized that the first CARME meeting was my second international conference. But the first one was in Antibes in 1989. And there I was introduced to John. And he told me that he would come and visit the Department of Data Theory in Leiden, where at that time I had started my PhD. And then from 1991 to 1993, he stayed several times extended as an associate professor or a guest associate professor at Leiden University. And John was very much interested in the so-called Leverrier-Fediev algorithm and asked me to co-author a paper in what became my first journal paper. And that was also the first and only paper that was ever accepted for publication without a revision. It was in a bit obscure journal, I must admit, Utilitas Mathematica. But nevertheless, I think the paper is really nice. From 1992 to 1994, he has paid several visits to, extended visits to university institutions such as the University of Dortmund. He was in Salamanca, he was at the Institut National de la Recherche Agronomique, INRA, in Paris. And from 1994 to 2011, he was at the Open University, where he was invited essentially by David Hand to do so. He got his professor positions, his full professor position, only at from 1997 onwards. So before that, John hadn't written a PhD. I think he had supervised PhD students, but he hadn't written a PhD, and he hadn't been a full professor. But going back to 1990, that John was really keen to develop his ideas on biplots and generalizations. And if I look back, then I think this has been the central theme of much of his research. And if it was anyhow possible, he would like to do that through an eigendecomposition. His interest into biplots led to the 1996 book Biplots that he co-authored with David Hand. And at some occasion, probably during a lunch or a conference visit, he told me that he liked compact titles, and with the book Biplots, I think he certainly succeeded in that. Around 2001, John came into contact with Neil Leroux and Suné Weber. Suné had written her PhD thesis on biplot methodology from the Biplot book, and they will correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was a reader, or how is it called? Examiner. He was an examiner. And this has certainly led to a very fruitful collaboration. In 2007, both John and I had a research visit to Stellenbosch and visited Neil and Suné. And of course, we walked together and had discussions. And he told me that when he read over his 1996 Biplots book, he didn't understand sometimes the stuff that he wrote himself, and thought that he needed a more friendly Biplot book. And that was written together with Neil and Suné, and that became the Understanding Biplots book that was published by Wiley in 2011. conferences. So I've been looking up several of the pictures that I had in my Google Photos reservoir, and many of those have John in there. And he was a keen conference goer at many different conferences that also both of us visited. Try to recollect that I know for sure that John has visited the CARME conferences of 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015. The 2019 version in Stellenbosch was online, and you can see sort of screenshots or pictures of that. Many of those here. He would sometimes tell me during a conference or during a break that he didn't really like all the talks so much, but the best part of conferences were the breaks. And I think the networking part is indeed a great thing about conferences. And something that I have appreciated a lot, and it has helped me also a lot, was that John always wanted to join, not only for a drink or for a dinner, but he definitely wanted to have to be in contact also with the younger generations. And I think that several of you who know John will recognize this. Now, I will be coming to the last part, and that is the John Gower Memorial. So, several weeks before John passed away, I know that, as Neil told me, that he was still actively discussing ideas for projects that they had together. The last weeks before, it was clear that also to him that it would come to an end, and therefore he meticulously planned a memorial at a local restaurant nearby, the Egyptian Mill, in Nailsworth, which is a small village where he lived. Caspar Alders and myself, we were representatives of the Dutch delegation, and you can see several others here as well, mostly from the UK. But we had no idea what to expect from that memorial. Would it be a sad occasion? Would it be solemn? What did we need to wear? The only thing that I knew was it would start at noon at this Egyptian Mill restaurant. When I arrived at the location, the first thing struck me was actually on, I think, the left-hand picture, and you can see that a little bit at the back. That was a big table that was full of glasses of red and white wine. And that struck me as exactly John. This is, to me, it was exactly in his own spirit to have a kind of a good conference reception with friends and family. And it turned out that that was exactly what the memorial was. I will remember John as a great scientist that certainly also has formed me as a scientist. And I think more importantly, I will remember him as a good friend. Thank you for your attention.
This brief note of appreciation of my good friend Antoine de Falguerolles reminds me of how sad I was at his passing this last July. It's also a chance to celebrate and give some appreciation of a great participant in CARME. Good friend. So who was Antoine? He was a maître de conférence at University of Toulouse Post-Batier. He was a great participant in the French Statistical Society, the International Institute of Statistics was something that he participated in actively. He came to many, many CARME meetings. He was a co-founder of Les Chevaliers des Albums He speaks about youth, and he was a lifelong friend. So this is just some representative papers of Antoine. He had so much karma in him. He did work on biplot models and log linear models, association models for contingency tables. He had papers with a number of co-authors published in the main journals of quantitative methods. He had a wide variety of other conference papers, visualization of categorical data, generalized bilinear models, quasi-symmetry and skew symmetry. Antoine's themes, of course, contingency tables, log linear models, RC models, biplots, but he was passionately interested in the history of statistics, where the modern roots of least squares came from, where ideas of astronomy conform to statistics. One paper he gave at a conference in Barcelona, he took as his theme the origins of least squares in the astronomical measurement of positions of bodies in the heavens to determine the shape of the Earth. This was one of the grand problems of the end of the 17th century. So he took as his theme the data on observations in a line from Dunkirk to Paris, down to Barcelona, and traced that to the history of Legendre, Tobias Mayer, and all. He contacted me at one point and said, I have this great insight into Colonel Cholesky, the origin of the Cholesky decomposition, and he wanted to trace Cholesky's path from an officer of field artillery to developing a practical method for understanding how to aim your cannons and so on and so forth. Antoine attended many CARME conferences. The first one that I attended was 1995, a visualization of categorical data. I met him at Barcelona, Rotterdam, Rennes. The last time at CARME was in Naples in 2015. More than just his academic work, Antoine was a wonderful host. He and his wife, Annick, lived in the summer in Annick's family mansion, family home in Belmont, near Montauban in France. Anyone in the statistics area who knew Antoine had a really automatic invitation to come and stay. My wife and I visited him there many times. He would open the fridge, take out a bottle of champagne and a large block of foie gras, and we would sit down at the kitchen table and discuss what's happening and so on and so forth. His table was always open, and we had many excursions that Antoine organized in the history of statistics and the history of data visualization in the area around Toulouse, Montauban, and so forth. We once went on a trek through back roads to visit the site of the observatory of Guillaume Le Notelier, who was the first person to develop maps of magnetic declination. His little observatory was built on a wooden platform, and it still exists. And of course, Antoine's interest in many of these historical figures was related to the fact that they were, like him, Protestants. And so he would always tell us, oh, and this is a Protestant statistician who was famous in the 19th or 18th or 17th century. One time we met at the Prise d'Alzot, which is the source of the origin of the water that flowed down from the Montagne to the Canal du Midi. And I reminded him that many years earlier, when I was fervently working on the history of Charles Joseph Menard, he said to me one time, Michael, I think I found in a paper of the old EMPC a reference that after Menard retired, he became an Inspector General of the Canal du Midi. And that set me off on a path to try to go and visit the archives of the Canal du Midi. I went to Béziers and I found the chief archivist. And I said, well, my friend Antoine de Falguerolles told me that Menard had served here. Can you find any record of it? And he went through all the files and I sat down and nothing turned up. So then I went to the other source of the archives of the Canal du Midi in Toulouse. Again, I asked to speak to the chief archivist, and I said, oh, those people in Béziers, they don't know how to keep records. They don't know, the true story of Charles Joseph Menard and the Canal du Midi. Anyway, that turned out also to be perhaps a figment of Antoine's overly active imagination, but I had great fun, and ever since then, the Canal du Midi has I have a special affection for it. We ride bikes on the canal path and so on, and I always think of Antoine. My second career in the history of data visualization really began with a volume that Antoine showed me of an old classic set of books. The album is TC Graphene. He showed me one image, I'll show it later, that set me off on a path to discover as much as I could about the history of data visualization. Another friend in Paris, Gilles Paulsky, Antoine and I set about to see if we could acquire the complete set of these volumes. There's 19 volumes from 1879 to 1899, the most exquisite collection of data graphics representing the culmination of a period I call the golden age of data visualization. We found them in a small bookshop in Paris. We arranged to purchase this set of volumes collectively. That is, each person would subscribe to 1 or 2 or 3 volumes, and we would possess them, but they were owned all together. Every chevalier had the right to say, I want the 1885 volume, and you send it to me, and so on and so forth. Through this collection, we became colleagues in work as well as in lots of fun. It became a fellowship of friends who would meet. I have a house in the south of France in the summer. We would meet there for Chevalier lunches once a year and trade stories, ideas, and so forth. There were a number of projects, joint Chevalier projects. None was as important or as interesting to me as the effort to find the tomb of Charles Joseph Menard. Antoine located a small passage in an old publication giving his address, Menard's address in Paris at 23 Rue du Bac. From that he found Menard's death certificate and was able, with the assistance of an amateur historian of Montparnasse, to locate the tomb in a section near another tomb of anher of my heroes in data visualization, Andre Michel Gary. We met here, we met there to plant a plaque on Menard's tomb showing an outline of its famous graph of Napoleon's March on Moscow. So, throughout the years, we would meet together for a Chevalier lunch, someplace in the southwest corner of France. We called ourselves les Chevaliers de Menard, des Pays Catalans, out of homage to the local theater. Antoine started a small tradition of giving gifts every time we would meet. So here he brought us each a large can of cassoulet from Toulouse, and I brought some maps. There's Ludovic Labart on the corner, and former PhD with me, our last lunch together was in Vic. We gathered, we would talk about common interests and common problems. It was a great deal of fun. Antoine's last paper is kind of characteristic. This is something that arose from the question that I had about the work of Andre Michel Gary. What you see on the right is an attempt, the first attempt to find something about the multivariate causes of crimes. Gary worked on the data from the French national judicial system. Every single crime, every single observation about where, when, the type of crime, and so on was categorized. Gary wanted to find the associations, and so this is a chart showing what he calls lines of vibration. That is, lines of association connecting what you see at the top of the more serious crimes going down to the less serious ones at the top. The little figures show percent of Catholics, Protestants, percent employed, unemployed, percent of different levels of education and so forth. And Gary wanted to find what are the causes of crime. Well, he used this term vibration, which comes from astronomy, the vibration of the moon, the oscillations of the moon, and we never had an understanding of it. So Antoine wrote this paper. He sent it to me in last April. It's called A Conjectural and Partial Understanding of Statistical Vibration Indices. I thought that was so characteristic of Antoine's modesty. I said, scrap the title, call it The Truth About Andre Michel Gary's Vibrations of the Moon. But no, Antoine was modest until we. So I know it's a bit early for it to suggest anything of a libation, but would you all raise a symbolic glass and do a final toast to my good friend and friend of many of you, Antoine de Falguerolles. If there's an afterlife, I can say I look forward to seeing Antoine again, so à la prochaine.